with him in that special way. Boys wanted to be him, and well, quite a few other boys also wanted to be with him in that special way. Spencer's coming out, and we are moments away from meeting him!
Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. Hey now, this is what dreams are made of. Wherever you are.
Bus driver, move that bus!
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Very fast, you know they never last. No, no.
Kelly Clarkson.
I want to be so famous that I'm the most downloaded person on the internet.
I want to be more famous than the internet. So you guys think there's going to be even more paparazzi when we get there? There better be.
Hello lovelies, my name is Bryony. Obviously you're here on a Tuesday. Tuesdays is where we do deep dives into the environmental, social and ethical issues of the world. Social and ethical issues and environmental issues kind of all get tied up in the decade of the 2000s because consumerism just went whoop, line goes up. If you haven't seen part 1, you'll be missing out on the context, but then you'll also be missing out on all of the trigger warnings, which I'll just put up on the screen for you now. Yep, there's a lot of them. I can't talk about the toxicity of the decade without raising these issues. Without any further ado, let's get on into it.
Who's Micah?
I am.
Congratulations, Micah. You are going to be transformed into the fairest lady of them all because you have just been chosen for an extreme makeover.
Be fooled by the rocks that I got. I'm still Jenny from the block. Used to have a little, now I have a lot.
Are they as handsome as you are? Do you guys take baths together?
I don't know who you are, but you must be some kind of superstar.
Kardashian, and welcome to my crib. There's usually lots of friends and family members in the kitchen, as we have today. I made a mistake. Just think you're making a huge mistake.
We're not right for each other.
You're such a bastard.
I ended things with her because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you.
Are you gonna quit? You got this far, walking the tightrope, eating flies, and you're just gonna quit? Are you really gonna quit?
I lose my breath.
Why are you quitting? Cow's blood. You will be bobbing for these.
Are you serious? Oh my God!
Reality TV taking over. Now I already have 2 separate videos on talk shows already, and it's been requested that I cover parenting TV shows that came out in the 2000s, so I'm kind of skipping that stuff, but please feel free to check them out. Did you know that Britney Spears had a reality TV show where she kind of invented vlogging? It's called Britney and Kevin Chaotic. It's like spending all that time with your best friend. I will link the first episode just as a teaser for you to go check out. It was from 2005. Yeah. I also do want to do a Britney video very badly, but I'm also trying to be aware of the fact that she's trying to like find her own life, so I don't really want to do that yet. The 2000s was really about wanting to break down facades, because it's like you had all of the disillusionment from the 90s. Like there have been like different disillusionment sort of like chapters for each decade, like you had the grunge and the slackers, but then in the 2000s there was this weird vibe of like wanting to like take that but then almost like hyperfixate on people in particular. This was when everything started to really get concentrated on commodification, label culture, and 15 minutes of fame. And guess what really helped with that? Reality TV shows where everyone was able to get their 15 minutes of fame and have no preparation for it. Makes for great TV to watch someone crumble. It was cheap to make, very titillating. You had instant connectivity with the average people watching on the other end of the screen, obviously, because instead of watching like our phones like what we do now, everyone was watching TV back then. Like, screen time has always been an issue. Like, you get all of these average people and put them in these awkward high pressure situations that they have to compete in order to be able to win like some sort of prize, and it actually launched a few careers from it as well. So not only that, but you know how it's just carried on that trajectory? This is the decade that really started it. You've heard of this little show called Big Brother, right? This is also when celebrity culture was like peak heat, like glowing white hot. Everyone was so involved with everything that every celebrity was up to ever, which is something I don't really think has sadly faded away. It gave people a chance to be able to see the real people as opposed to like whatever projected image there was of them. Even though in the simple life, like, we know that Paris was told to like put on that voice and do and act the way that she did. I will give you a heads up, I did actually watch a few episodes of this. I didn't watch it at the time because it just wasn't my jam at the time. If you are vegan, do not watch this show. I had to keep skipping over huge swaths of it because there's animal cruelty in every single episode. It really is in episode 3 when they're at the burger joint where you can see the really close camaraderie between Paris and Nicole, and that's why like people really watched it. That's why teenagers watched it, because I would act that way with my besties. Their kind of immaturity and do not care about anything, like that sort of like very stereotypically immature vibe was why teenagers wanted to watch it, and it was why adults were hate watching it. Also because you had like pretty people wearing skimpy clothing that they constantly exploited. The whole premise was the fact that you could openly judge people who were of the upper echelons because like they've got no relatability to the rest of the world. Like, they purposely took them to go across country to like more rural parts of America, typically on farms and stuff. It was a chance to like punch up in a way, and that was sort of the vibe. But when it comes to the celebrity ones, except for the Britney one, oh my gosh, you could tell Britney was heavily involved in that, that's all I'm saying. This was the vibe that you got from the shows like Undercover Boss and Newlyweds, My New BFF, which was Paris's next TV show.
So what if I thought chicken of the sea tuna was actually chicken? Or that I thought buffalo wings were actually made out of buffaloes? So what if I cried for 3 whole days when I thought Peter Pan was ground up to make peanut butter?
Then you've got a different category of dating shows. You had Baggage, The Bachelor, Joe Millionaire, The Average Joe, Date My Mum. All involved people that were out to find love, whilst everyone was casting open judgment, slut-shaming the whole time. My goodness, like the way that people were being like treated on the show, let alone at home. It was the decade of judgment. If you wonder where I get it from, it's that, and also I'm a Scorpio. And not only that, but like the forceful airing of incredibly personal information as if people were really entitled to it. And the objectification that's been prevalent for many, many, many years got ramped up even more so because in this edgy culture, it was cool to fat shame people and stuff. And then also slut shame them. Like, it's gotten to the point where it was back then, it's just crept up and up and up, and then you've got shows like Temptation Island and Love Island now. Oh, and also that naked dating show, like the one where the thing reveals more and more of the person. That's what we have now, and we've got this decade to thank for it. But the thing is, because it was so new, there were barely any boundaries or safety objectives in place at all. I don't really think that today Paris Hilton or someone of that sort of caliber of richness and wealth would get trampled on by a horse like what actually happened to her at the start of season 2 of The Simple Life. I watched that episode. She fully got trampled on. That was real. Nor do I think that we'd see people be happy to watch people get hospitalized for trying to lose weight quickly, or vomiting because they're working out too much.
Justin, the bartender from Bayonne, New Jersey, threatened house guests with violence and physical intimidation. It was a violation of one of the most serious rules of the house. As you will soon see, Justin's threatening behavior continued, as did the concerns of his housemates for their own safety.
And we've also normalized plastic surgery to the point where if you look at the contestants that were on the show back then to now, like most of the people on shows now have actually had work done, whether it's veneers, non-invasive procedures, full-on plastic surgery. Like there is a stark difference between these two. And it's because of being able to get your 15 minutes of fame and then launch your career off it, and because we've had more pressure for everyone to look better than average, and with the greater accessibility of plastic surgery as well, with the joys of like surgery tourism and stuff. Like, the thing is that our expectations for what we will be willing to actually watch on screen, on a TV screen, to be able to watch a show, it's actually increased for like the standards. We're not exactly happy to watch an average Joe, at least especially when it comes to women on screen. And that's because of this decade. Like, the trajectory from 2000 to 2010, the change that you actually see, like makeup application gets better, every sort of aspect of people being able to hold themselves better, entertain people better, it just increased over that time as people have kind of like undergone like their own media training by watching these shows and understanding like how to play the game. Even though it's meant to be reality, we know that it's not.
Thank you, darling.
I'm a sexy mama, just how to get what I wanna do is spring this on ya.
Sign the grapes and the cakes, hey. Come on to my house,
Playboy was a fashion icon. Yeah, I'm not even kidding you. We had a store even here in Little Aotearoa, which I would like to go to as well back in the day because it was so pretty. It was like plastic shoes, they had clothes, they had underwear, they had jewelry, they had everything with the classic Playboy bunny logo on it. I even bought a watch from there because one, I couldn't fit into the stuff anyway because, you know, this is the days of like washboard abs, like really low-rise jeans and like 3 push-up bras put together. Like, this aesthetic was kind of one of the fantasy dreams, and I still like the whole black and pink thing to this very day. The fact that Playboy had a renaissance era in the 2000s speaks absolute volumes as to the misogyny of the time. It had the house, the magazine, a TV show, movies, so much stuff was and merch that everyone was buying and wearing. Like, I fully, when I would eventually down the track be able to get a car, I was like, I want to have Playboy cover seats, I want to do all this stuff. It's like, it was literally an aesthetic, a lifestyle choice, a way of life, looking like that and acting like that. It wasn't ever actually about embracing sexuality for women, it was about performing for men. That's the difference because, again, I'm going to be making that whole video about objectification later. Like, the aesthetic was trashy, like gloriously so. Like, I do talk about this in my tragic icon videos. Like, I love a trashy aesthetic. Like, you are watching a video from a girl who as a teenager waking up from a bender would go to a driveway and drink tequila sunrise first thing when I woke up in the morning out of a box. So when we're on about like trashy appreciation, right here, baby. But if you did like this aesthetic, you were labelled with daddy issues, with being easy, with being a slut, with being able to just be used and tossed aside. It's like definite one night stand material, and people did not give a single hoot about your feelings. Like, you were definitely not the final girl in a horror movie, okay, sweetie? Even if you did feel empowered in yourself, you were wearing a literal label of a very misogynistic, controlling and abusive brand just blazoned all over you. And it was still fitting into men's desires as opposed to your own because we didn't really think about things like the female gaze and like how women actually wanted to feel comfortable and sensual and everything. It was fitting into a way to be desired by men because that's what we've been told is like the goal, the thing. It's like, if you want to feel sexy, this is what you do. You follow what Playboy does. It's literal indoctrination as opposed to like allowing people to like find out different ways of stuff. Now look, I am really glad that Playboy's been like deplatformed now.
Hef asks to see like home movies of Kendra when she's a kid, and then he like comments on like how cute she is and that he's gonna steal the tape, and it just comes off as like the worst, like grossest, dirty old man. And I remember just hating this scene and being so embarrassed because, you know, after I got into that relationship, like I would notice things about him that seemed even like creepier. Like, yeah, you look at the situation, you're like, okay, here's this old man dating much younger women, but I would notice even creepier stuff sometimes about him. I've mentioned that in commentary videos before. And when it would come up or I would get like a hint of it, I would just be like, go away,
Like, I used to love watching the Playboy TV show. Holly was my favourite personally. Everyone had their favourite. I liked Holly. Just because Playboy itself has kind of been deplatformed doesn't mean that the porn industry as a whole hasn't got a massive underbelly of secret, hidden, terrible, awful issues under it as well. And treating women with respect is still yeah. Now also it's very interesting because the Playboy obsession went hand in hand with rock stars from the 80s and rappers from the 90s suddenly getting like a surge in like popularity again. You had Gene Simmons from Kiss, you had Bret Michaels from Poison, and you also had Flavor Flav. So you had all three of them. Two were actually on their own love show where you could get a whole bunch of women to vie for their attention. Like, do you remember watching Rock of Love? Because I do. I liked it.
Most hottest women I'd ever seen. This rocks. We are gonna have the most awesome, kick-ass time. I'm a pretty lucky guy, and I know most guys would kill to be here right now.
Right.
But you don't want to go through the rest of your life.
Right.
No wonder I've had to do so much deprogramming. Like, what? Both of these shows were being slut-shamey at the same time as making them fight over a man who had his heyday like over a decade ago. Now, Jamie French has already talked about Flavor Flav's show, which again falls into many of the same tropes, of course. He's a little bit funnier than Bret Michaels though. Bret Michaels is just like, I get this feeling of grease, like, oh, you know like when you're just near someone that you look like, I swear that America would invade you if they could. That's the feeling that I get. Just, yeah, you know, just ugh. But you know, like, I also do not want to platform Flavor Flav because he's been charged with attempted murder after shooting his neighbor, and also he assaulted his girlfriend, so I'm not really going to be putting him in a positive light, sorry.
I've been made fun of from elementary all the way to high school.
Not only did students make fun of Monica, but there was a teacher that actually made her stand up in front of a group of 60 kids and told them that they didn't want to be like Monica.
And it just burned a hole right through me.
What? No! Yes! For the 5th year in a row, ladies and gentlemen, the marathon winner is Donald Delaney Kirk!
Life is unfair.
Oppression Olympics. It might sound strange for me to say it, but I'll just explain. This is really an issue which is a subset from reality TV. With shows like Extreme Makeover, Extreme Home Makeover, American Idol, The Biggest Loser, having a sob story was incredibly important for you to be deemed of as being worthy of getting stuff for free or winning. It made you a public favourite. And I've got a couple of clear problems here, which I think you can probably already guess. The first one is obviously exploiting a person's pain and dragging all of that back up and literally putting out like whatever circumstance they may be in on screen for literally millions to see for views. It's like they have to suffer to be chosen as being like worthy or something. That was definitely messaging that came across all the time. Like people would actually nominate others and be like, this is their big sob story, this is why I should pick them, as opposed to questioning like the systemic issues at play. It was like, oh, we've cherry picked this one person that was suffering. There you go, we're going to pick you up here. Oh, by the way, you've got no media training or anything, and we're just going to be here to make you suffer. But the views, the money, yay, we can get another season. You know, basically just not critiquing the system, which was at fault to begin with. Like, this was a time where kids were really applauded for like having a job instead of asking for handouts to pay for their cancer treatment. Still is a weird phenomenon. I don't get this. The people who got the home makeover were absolutely worthy to have their room filled with butterflies because they mentioned once when they were 6 that they liked a butterfly. They had suffered so much, they'd lost everything, and therefore they deserved to have a shelter. They deserved to have a roof over their head. Wow. The real issue here is obviously it wasn't humanizing at all. It was a cheap way to exploit typically the poor and people that have really gone through a lot of adversity. And instead of doing that stuff like not publicly, to do it publicly to make profit from it. It was just a cheap way to pull on people's heartstrings to make them watch and like feel better for watching and be like, oh, my life isn't that bad, oh, good on them, at least they deserve it because they suffered enough. I don't like this whole thing, because in my mind as well, what all of this actually did by having this whole Cinderella complex, been across blistering winds, scorching deserts, and they've climbed to the highest room of the tallest tower, and they've suffered heaps, and they haven't said a word about it. And that's my other problem with it, because you know what all of that does? Making people suffer in silence. One, it just, for men who already have to struggle to be able to talk about their feelings because toxic masculinity, especially during this time, was very bad, it also means that people were saying a lot of comparative stuff, which was belittling to people's mental well-being. So you've got people that are saying like, oh, well, you don't have it that bad. Why do you really deserve this? Because you haven't suffered as much as this person. You should be grateful to be alive. Like, there are people that are starving. There's all of this stuff where it's like actual genuine mental health issues, anguish, and situations. Because you know what I always like to say, and I'm going to repeat it right here in case there are people that are commenting this stuff down below, is it's all relative to what each person has experienced. I wouldn't be expecting people to understand my struggles from childhood just as like you wouldn't expect me to understand yours, because I'm pretty sure not everyone had a stalker father who told them that their family was trying to kill them for most of their lives. So yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's making people only attribute like people that are worthy to not say anything if they are struggling, to not question a system that is systemically oppressing them. Because obviously I do think it's important to question why there are people that are stuck in poverty cycles, which means addressing the full system as opposed to just being like, we cherry picked this one person out of it so they're fine, instead of everyone else, and lifting everyone else out of poverty and not being in mouldy homes like what happens at most places around Aotearoa.
Hey, so you know how I've always had a thing for half Asian girls? Well, now I've got a new favorite. Lebanese girl. Lebanese girls are the new half Asians. My younger sister just got married and I'm about to turn 36. Fantastic.
Good girl going bad. Take 3. Action.
6 words. You look fat in those jeans. You're free to go.
Is she complying to my request to put her hand here? Awesome. Good. I'll just leave it there for now if it's all good. If her hand's up, if she's holding it lightly, I could then turn to her and say, can you cook? No? Well, get off me.
Negging, pickup artists, and the male-female war. There was a unique little subset of reality TV from the dating show Offspring. There was an infestation set upon us of young men, typically, who decided that peacocking and negging was like a really great way to court someone and trick them into sleeping with you. And now they've all evolved into the alpha males you see before you today, and I'm very sorry for that. Let's dive in. Strangely, magic tricks were also involved with this.
Time flies, but magic flies faster.
All right, now it's getting kind of creepy because you must have just touched me and I didn't feel anything.
Now look, I'm not going to go telling people that love isn't real and that you shouldn't try and find a partner or partners, whatever works for you. That was the old me, back in the day when I was single. I was very much this.
Thank you for curing me of my ridiculous obsession with love.
It was a really interesting time in the 2000s because there was a really weird route that feminism went down, in the way that you would kind of deny being a feminist but then also want to empower women but then also trash talk them and slut shame them, and yeah, very weird messaging to grow up in. And that of course brought the rise of the pick-me's, sorry, and also the N-logs. Because you had very sexually confident women, at least on the outside, they still had like all of the deep-seated insecurities of the patriarchy just seething inside their brains. With this sort of shift, along with like men really wanting to be like Joey Tribbiani, but for some reason completely removed the heart, which was the part of him that made people actually like him.
Oh, well, what I do is I look a woman up and down and I say, hey, how you doing?
Oh, please.
Hey, how you doing?
It meant that men started like posturing in, like, you know how traditionally it always has been this whole like, oh, the more people that you sleep with, the better that you are as a man, and blah blah, all this toxic rubbish, honestly. Now you had the show The Pickup Artist.
Mystery has been featured in the best-selling book, The Game, and dozens of magazines.
Women have a certain number of attractions,
which was actually aimed at losers who weren't able to manipulate women enough to be able to get a date. Yeah, I've definitely put on enough lip gloss that is feeling it.
I'm 26 years old and never had a girlfriend.
The thing that terrifies me is, I've made almost no tangible progress since high school. How would you describe our relationship?
Just friends. You have this man called Mystery, not even kidding you, to thank for that as well. I think that he really had like a bit of a thing for Jack Sparrow and Chris Angel, and then you get this. You just kind of take away all the charisma and then put in a whole bunch of pseudoscience and posturing, and voila, he's still going today. I've watched some of his speeches. They're not good.
Get from holding her hands to arm in arm to leaning in, smelling her and saying, God, you smell so fucking good. I'm trying so hard not to kiss you right now.
The whole premise of the show was to be able to teach these woefully lost souls of men who had never moved up to their mother's basement or whatever other random thing they decided to bestow upon them, and then make them wear gangster chains and stuff as well as part of their peacocking transformation. I feel so sorry for these people. And then once they'd learned the tricks of the trade enough, they could lure a girl onto a date. Pixie. Of course, this is the goal that they vocally say it was all about, but we really know that it was actually more of a sexual one-night stand. It looked more like this famous picture of a lamp that they were after. And yes, I did watch this show when it was out, and I thought it was cool. The issue is that he uses terms that he doesn't even understand and literally mean nothing. Like, you listen to this man try and say a sentence, and he loses himself in the BS.
You can easily keep yourself safe by not telegraphing interest to the target right away. All you have to do is neg the target loud enough for the obstacles to hear, and they will go, oh, okay, so you're not after her. And they're disarmed. So negs hold more meaning than just, trying to lower her self-esteem.
He pretends like he knows about psychology, but at the same time it's literally just how to train a dog, even to the point of saying about women now, does she comply to this? I'm so sorry. This brought about the alpha males. I'm really sorry. He even uses this compliance technique to trick women into being able to get them to sleep with him, up to and including that point. For some reason, the video online got cut off at that point when he was going into details about this part as well. Can't imagine why.
You have to get good at all these freeze-outs as you lead all the way up to dealing with last-minute resistance. You're in bed with her now. What happens?
Without this sort of person existing, we wouldn't have the Barney Stinson character. I know that they had to make great changes to him, and yes, I have watched a whole bunch of episodes of it for preparation for this video. The thing is, at least Joey wasn't doing things that were illegal, like what Barney was, but we still thought it was adorable, even though it was kind of called out in the show. Not really. Joey didn't share food, and Joey didn't commit crimes, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. But because we had all these men like posturing themselves and puffing themselves up into how to trick women to sleep with them, we got blessed with movies like Hitched and The Ugly Truth, which were incredibly popular at the time, and I would actually still take Hitched any day over watching The Ugly Truth ever again. Even though in Hitched the homophobia is so strong in that, but of course we're talking about that in a whole other section.
You're for the common man. 8 out of 10 women believe that the first kiss will tell them everything that they need to know. The secret is to go 90% of the way and hold. Now show me the magic. Show me the magic. What the hell was that? I showed you the magic. No, I said come 90 and then I come 10. You don't go the whole 100. You overzealous.
Like I said before, this decade really was about catering towards the male gaze. To be able to rekindle sexiness. I mean, even in our own magazines, like I loved Cosmo back in the day. Any Cosmo girl would have known that basically all of the articles were about how to keep a man and how to make sure the man is pleased. Not much of it was really focused on us other than making sure that our lady bits were actually taken care of, or weight loss stuff. There were some interesting articles in there sometimes, I'm not going to deny that, but one about like the sexual health was actually more focused on pleasing the man. Most of the time, as a reader and also as someone who's gone back over the decade of looking at all of the covers. Now, also, when I've been watching all these video clips of Mystery, the thing is that the comment sections are full of people who absolutely think he's a genius and could never be questioned. It's like, well, you know what? I've tried these techniques and they made sure I get laid every time, and honestly, the whole point about alpha males making any of these videos and stuff is literally just a way to manipulate other men into giving them money, and then you have these little groups which is literally just a circle jerk of how much pussycat they're going to get or not. as it would more likely turn out. The thing is, if you could actually just empower people to be happy with themselves and embrace who they actually are, I think that you would actually get a lot more success, and maybe even work on communication skills as opposed to manipulation skills. Wouldn't that just be revolutionary? Now, I did actually mention that magic had a bit of resurgence in the 2000s, and it actually did, because that was one of the tricks of the pickup artists to, you know, like blow glitter in a woman's face to then like chuck them over their shoulder or something. I don't know, whatever caveman mentality. Apparently because we've got a uterus, we all think differently too.
A woman's value comes in her replication value for a man, legitimately, right? And for a woman, it's 70% is going to be her survival value. And it is all because of one device that is hooked up to her brain that she has hardwired into her chassis that we do not possess. A uterus. That's it.
Don't even get me started on the way that he thinks about genders. But because of magic survival, it gave these wannabe pickup artists a way to actually like hone their skills a little bit better to be able to have these conversation pieces. I mean, like I said, we had David Copperfield, we had Chris Angel, and even Pamela Anderson was an assistant at a Las Vegas show as well. She didn't want animals there though, so I'm really glad to hear that.
I am smarter than 99% of the population.
You may want to put on slacks.
What? Stop it! No! Leave me alone!
I'm a member of Mensa, an organization that takes the top 2% of intellectual individuals.
Would you like to explain to me why your Facebook page has a picture of me sleeping on your shoulder captioned "Me and my girlfriend"?
Uh-oh, here comes the talk. 1/4-inch PVC.
Guys, this is actually really simple.
Hold on, honey, men at work.
The geeks are just the most amazing people, and I want to know everything about them.
Justin Bieber was born in Ontario. What country is that in?
North America?
That's not a country, that's a continent. I've said that to her at least 10 times.
There was literally a reality TV show called Beauty and the Geek, which aired from 2005 to 2008, which is also apparently coming back in Australia, even though like I thought that we were just emulating Y2K fashion, not the mentality. Now look, I loved that show, I grew up on it, I thought it was amazing. Of course, like, it did the whole bimbo bashing thing, very heteronormative expectations, and pointing out how stupid these pretty girls were, and how frumpy these geeks were, and just, oh, it was very much this whole segregation thing, kind of like with the same sort of flavours that you get from Revenge of the Nerd, or whatever that is, that 1980s movie. Very similar flavours.
Most of the men who were labelled as being geeks were actually genuinely lovely people though, I have to point that out, but the problem I have with it is that they were just typecast. Everyone was just being typecast on these shows and used against each other under the form of like being a social experiment, as opposed to like being able to see people as whole people. They really did try and hammer home the fact that these men were so uncool, and like virginity shame, like there was a lot of problems in the way that they treated these men and the women. It's like it wasn't good to anyone.
And this is also the time of the Big Bang Theory airing, which is really just misogyny with a laugh track. Because when you actually look at the character development, all of the women were continually mocked and actually were rewards for the men who were kind of acting trash, and also the terrible racial stereotyping that happened to poor Raj.
Exactly what I thought. Thank you for listening. You're a doll.
Uh-oh. Turn your pelvis.
Highlight of the evening was when you showed us your Bollywood breakdancing skills. Dang diggy dang diggy dang dang diggy diggy dang diggy dang 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 diggy.
I made chicken. I hope that isn't one of the animals that you people think is magic.
What are you doing? Don't worry, you'll thank me. Hello, Lalita, Rajkuta. Yes, it is good to talk to you too. So, what are you wearing?
The only female who got respect in terms of like an academic sense, even though Bernadette was actually incredibly intelligent, was Amy, and she was cast as being the ugly one and more traditionally masculine. And don't even get me started on the whole thing around Sheldon being kind of like coded as having autism. So yeah, Cheyenne Lynn has got a fantastic video on this as well. No, seriously, we're absolutely fine with rewarding Howard, the objectively worst person who continually found ways to actively perv on people and try and do the worst things to any woman that he could find with a pulse, possibly even without one. I wouldn't put it past him. Reward him with marrying someone as good as Bernadette. Okay, cool, that's fantastic. Love it. Why are you licking my leg? Oh my gosh, that's the second time. The Girl Next Door is a film that tried to turn this trope on its head a bit. Now, this is a movie I did really like as a teenager. But the thing is that it absolutely does miss the mark by falling into the usual tropes of hooker with a heart of gold and the whole born-again virgin sort of trope. But they managed to keep the excitement of her. And also the fact that she had never actually had the plastic surgery that the other prawn stars actually had. And they were kind of like shown to be more stupid than her. Whilst I understand some of the things that they were trying to do, it still went straight back to misogyny again, and pitting women against each other once again. And of course, those prawn stars were actually used as rewards once again, because great. The smart guy gets rewarded with the pretty girl who can have like some sort of intelligence but not really all that much and still easily be mocked for it. I've said this before, but people don't have to tick every box and be of a certain level of intelligence to be worthy of being respected.
Daddy says it's only for emergencies. This is definitely an emergency.
What's new? I want a full report.
We have a china set that just arrived, still in its crate, that screams Emily Gilmore.
Hand-painted?
Designed in 1870 for the Shah of Persia, the finest. Would you like to see it?
No need. Give me a set of 12, plus soup tureen, sauce boats, the works. What else?
Doreen.
That's gorgeous.
From Giorgio Baldi's studio in Venice. They only made 18.
Wrap them up.
Right away.
Car and a crib, she about to pay them both off. And the bills are paid on time. Think what that money could bring. I bought everything. What you say? Oh, that you only meant well.
Consumerism and capitalism, the glorification of the dollar. And stuff, a lot of stuff, whether it's see-through stuff in particular. Wow. Now I actually really want to track consumerism as an entire video, like from basically the Industrial Revolution. I really want to do a whole video on that, so I won't dive too deeply into it in this one. But there really is a unique way that the 2000s impacted our view towards consumerism in a post-9/11 world. Again, Lindsay Lohan has already talked about this, and I just watched Jordan Teresa's video which already talked about some of these points as well, so I'm going to really minimize like what I'm saying here. In my opinion, the 2000s had a triple-fold impact on consumerism. Nationalism, reality TV, and social media. After the 1990s .com bubble burst, and then you had Y2K, and then sadly and tragically we also had 9/11 happen, which still people are feeling the many impacts of today. Messaging from all angles was that you could support your country by consuming, by doing a bit for the economy. And also because the 2000s brought about it this massive wave of like reality TV, it meant that everyone was always vying to look fresh, and this actually made trends actually condense a lot more. Like, I know that we've got micro trends that happen all the time now, but even in the 2000s we did have a lot of trends then too. In the 90s it kind of fell into like quite distinct things that spanned a few years. In the 2000s we actually really did start to get like much more condensed. But the problem was that you would get a new trend shown at you all the time, not only through tabloid media but also through these reality TV shows that people were meant to be vying for. And being able to actually see what the rich people were up to and get an intimate view of their homes and everything, whether it was like MTV Cribs or the Newlywed Show or what Paris Hilton was wearing, like things just got churned around so much, and outfits weren't really repeated because having an outfit repeat was seen as a terrible thing.
I love this Dolce & Gabbana dress. I love Dolce & Gabbana. I wore this Missoni dress last night. I'm gonna have to switch it out because I've already worn some of these, and you know, you can't really wear anything more than once.
I still remember being really worried about a mufti day in school because in Aotearoa, typically we all wear uniforms. I was always very nervous about a mufti day because I don't really have disposable income for cool clothes. The thing is that with social media, because people were posting pictures of themselves online and updating people, if you were seen wearing the same thing, it's a bit like, oh, they're poor then. Like, being poor now is viewed with a bit less stigma than being poor then. That was really seen because we had this whole meritocracy myth, like, that everyone drank the Kool-Aid of. It was seen as like this really, oh, I thought I saw you wear that before. Because everyone knew what you wore last summer and also last Tuesday. So it really did start in this mindset of wearing something fresh. Everything always had to be very fresh and new and shiny and distracting. So from my point of view, especially like kids that were like really young growing up then, like they would have had hyper consumerism like just ingrained in their minds literally from birth. I know that we've been sold a lot of stuff because 90s children, but then it just got more and more and more, and so it doesn't really surprise me that we've got this disgusting whole mindset of just buying heaps of stuff that you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, 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 no, just getting off the high about being able to buy like a $3 top and then buy like literally 100 of them for a try on video that you then return and then just turns into trash. Because that's actually what happens. Same as returning makeup. Do not buy makeup with the thought about returning it, because returning makeup goes in the trash. This is a finite resource. Do I really want this finite resource that is the planet to be used for this thing? Yes? Okay, great. I'm happy with that guilt on my back. That's the way that I view like purchases. The 2000s like was such a catalyst for what we see today because of the advancements in technology and the different forms of entertainment, and because people were actually able to connect globally a lot easier and be able to actually see the different trends that were happening, which sparked all of these faster cycles. Do not get me wrong, we did have environmental concerns back then, like Captain Planet wasn't for nothing, but environmentalists were sort of seen in the same vein as like what Al Gore was with an inconvenient truth, which everyone just kind of like brushed aside because it would mean confronting a whole bunch of stuff, and they're just like, oh well, he's a failed president, what do we care about him, because he didn't get the presidency. How different a world would it be? My gosh, I would like to go down that timeline if we could please. I mean, you even had South Park like making the whole man-bear-pig thing. I don't know if you remember that, and then they had to eat their words on it because they were actually of the climate denier camp initially, and they had to backtrack on that. I mean, I'm still a South Park fan, even though it's very problematic in every way, but what I'm saying is like they had to backtrack on it, but they, with their big influence, were still part of the whole like, ugh, this isn't even a thing. Being an environmentalist back then was not really a cool thing, let's say, because that went against consumerism and shiny things and all of the things that we were all trying to do to distract us, because you know that whole terrorism threat thing, which was really just racism and Islamophobia. Let's be honest, and also a way to try and control the oil resources of the world very conveniently. All of this was a fantastic way to distract the masses. And then of course you had the GFC happen, which was a great time to enter the full-time job market, I'm telling you that. Wow, fun. And that was a time where you actually realised who the big baddies really were, at least some people did, because the thing is that they were known in the 80s to be the big baddies, but they'd gone through such a fantastic rebrand through the 90s and the 2000s that people had completely forgotten about the corruption in place. Let's keep moving on. I could go on about my saltiness here for too long.
Waking up at the start of the end of the world, but it's feeling just like every other morning before.
Here for me.
Oh, I wasn't making anything. I'd just like you to stay away from my children.
Okay, let me just ask you one question. I'll leave you alone, okay?
I'm not interested in your questions. I'd like
I just
to
want to know about what you think about Kim Kardashian.
You just ran away from me in an airport. I'd just like to remind you.
It's your fault, not mine.
Celebrity and tabloid worship. So celebrities were everywhere before, right? Like peddling us stuff that we didn't really want. So whether it was Marilyn Monroe saying about gasoline or about Coke, or Keanu Reeves promoting, what was it? Cornflakes in the 1980s. We had like Brooke Shields for Calvin Klein. We had Cindy Crawford for Pepsi, and then we move on to the cusp of the 2000s with Britney Spears for Polaroid. What happened in the 2000s with the paparazzi culture was the fact that celebrities were being sent swaths of things for them to have the hope of being able to like get picked by the paparazzi, like little pictures of them like carrying a bag or like doing whatever. Like famously, this was done in a way with Snooki back in the late 2000s or early 2010s. Different brands would send them things from other brands to make sure that Snooki wasn't carrying their own brand. So they'd be like, so for example, I don't even know the names of it, but like Louis would send them a Gucci bag, for example, so then they would carry that one around instead. To not devalue the brand. But of course the real way to do that is to just destroy the merchandise, isn't it? Rather than give it away for free, huh? Gotta keep that fake price up. So then you can even think about the show Sex and the City and what Sarah Jessica Parker did for Manolo Blahnik. We now had like real life influences like the cast of The Hills, like Paris Hilton. Then later on you had Jersey Shore, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Even going on to TV shows, like we know how much The OC really did like have a big impact on music that was even listened to. You had Gilmore Girls, Gossip Girl, Grey's Anatomy, Desperate Housewives, How I Met Your Mother. Like honestly the list goes on forever. All of these names that were just everywhere and being caught by the paparazzi as well. And also this was a whole bunch of grown-ass women making constant sexist, racist, homophobic and slut-shaming jokes. It's a trash show. My gosh, I watched it as a teenager and I'm like, looking back. Obviously one of the most famous things that happened in the later half of the 2000s was Britney's mental breakdown, which got caught on camera because the paparazzi don't care, surprise surprise. But also we were buying the magazines, right, clicking the articles these days, so instead of just focusing on this most traumatic part of her life, because everyone's talked about it during the conservatorship, you've seen the pictures, I do not need to put more of that into the world. I'd rather just let her try and live her life, which she is doing happily on Instagram, and I follow her there instead. So painting a picture of what the paparazzi was like back then, you know the symbiotic relationship, like the really dark one, that the royal family has with the press and how they like invite them for like dinners and let them in on like the royal secrets and stuff. It's kind of always been that way with celebrities and paparazzi anyway. But way more exploitative. Like the invasiveness was more intense, boundaries were never respected, like constantly hounded, like so much so that injuries would be able to happen, like people weren't able to get in and out of cars, leave their house and stuff. Like I talked about in my Amy Winehouse video, the stuff that she went through, and it was constant, relentless. Even if they tried to make a boundary with saying like what they will talk about and what they won't talk about before going on a talk show, or having an interview, like those boundaries were never respected. I did talk about this in my Pamela Anderson video as well. And also infamously with Lindsay Lohan, with David Letterman, I think it was, actually just making her fully cry.
And how long will you be in rehab?
3 months.
How many times have you been in rehab?
Several.
And how will this time be different? What are they rehabbing, first of all? What is on their list? What are they going to work on when you walk through the door?
We didn't discuss this in the pre-interview.
No.
And there was not only that, but in order to stay relevant and to get jobs to be able to get hired, you had to be a little bit more outrageous. So in the 2000s, there was this other really insidious underbelly. There was a very messy trend, especially in the mid to late 2000s, of really glorifying like drug use and people falling apart because of drugs. Like I said, Amy Winehouse definitely fell victim to this, and Kate Moss also fell victim to this as well. It was this weird mix of glorifying at the same time as public shaming. Like they really were never seen as people, and people like you and me would just be picking up these magazines or gossiping about it or like whatever, clicking on the articles on the clunky websites that existed. And we were just like vultures, honestly, because there was this real mentality of the fact that you've got this rich person with all of this privilege, and what's it matter because like they're the rich and the famous. They're complaining about what? I'm sorry, like they've got heaps of money. And there was a real attitude for basically everyone, but especially for celebrities, to be able to take a joke and it's like, well, you asked for it. Whereas we're still unlearning this now and around boundaries and stuff, because people, especially with it being online, the viciousness is always cranked all the way up to 11. Celebrities and whomever actually appeared in the magazine was literally just entertainment and ready for taking, because if you put yourself out there, then you're asking for it, which applies to all the slut shaming stuff we were talking about before. Every single inch of the person got like picked at relentlessly, like whatever insecurity, if they got a new tattoo, if they gained 5 pounds, shock horror, like everything. And the people who actually caved to the relentless mocking and belittlement and comparison photos and everything else that was going on, the ones that actually caved by doing things, whether it was more extreme dieting or falling prey to an eating disorder, or if they got any work done, they were publicly shamed for it and put on worst stress lists. They were slagged off all the time. It was really disgusting what actually happened. In particular, who comes to mind when I say this is Victoria Beckham and Jerry Halliwell from obviously Spice Girls. There will be a Spice Girls video, do not worry. My list just keeps growing all the time because it was very public about their EDs. And also Mila Tequila, if you're not subscribed to her, you should be. I don't know why you wouldn't be. She did an episode covering the Hills and talked about Heidi Montag, who famously got 10 surgeries done in one day. It was a really strange phenomenon because not only were celebrities picked apart all the time, they were also pedestaled. Like, I strongly remember everyone raving about Kylie Minogue's body. Yes, the original Kylie. So don't trying to trademark the name Kylie. My gosh, you don't know whose footsteps you walk in. So with Kylie Minogue, everyone was absolutely enamored with her body, and like, I remember her gold shorts selling for like some ridiculous price as well. Did I knock off my gem? No. Okay, good. We're still gemmed. And the thing is that that figure was a constant goal for people, even though she's incredibly petite. Basically unachievable for pretty much most people, honestly. Magazines were absolutely full of how to look like X and what Y eats in a day and all of that stuff. Oh, and of course with the obligatory like, oh, but beauty's only skin deep, you gotta be healthy. Healthy is the most important thing. But also 90% of what we're doing is giving you insecurities with like advertising and like this little sprinkle on top of just like, don't forget to have some self-esteem, sweetie. How? But this was also in the time where you had far more accessibility for people to get their 15 minutes of fame, right? And you had MySpace, Tumblr, and reality TV shows. Honestly, in my opinion, this all provided an incredibly dangerous cocktail, which has only gotten worse as time has gone on. Okay, hi, you made it to the end of part 2. Guess what? I didn't actually film the end of part 2 because I thought this was going to be a two-parter. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. What was your favourite song from the 2000s? I know it's going to be hard to try and narrow it down. It really will be. I know that I definitely find it very challenging because, like, this is obviously my decade. Oh god, do I even have a favourite song? Oh, maybe Best of You by Foo Fighters. I've cranked that so many times. I think that would probably, it's in my top 10 favourite songs of all time. So yeah, I'll have the Best of You from the Foo Fighters. Anyway, I'll see you next week for part 3. I will warn you, part 3, we're going into bigger, kind of darker issues. I've sort of saved like those ones to last. I've tried to categorize these as best I can in like clumps. So we'll just see how it goes, okay? This was originally going to be a one-parter. That would be a 3-hour video at this point. Seriously, what? I'll see you then. Bye.